Tunisians are set for their second free election since sparking the Arab Spring. On Sunday, they'll vote for a new parliament. But is their seemingly smooth transition to democracy facing challenges? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Mike Hanna. In the aftermath of the Arab Spring, the hopes of many for an end to autocratic rule have failed to materialise, apart from in one country, Tunisia, which is about to hold its second free election since 2011. Unlike many of its regional neighbours, Tunisia hasn't been scarred by widespread political violence. After its longtime ruler, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, was deposed, the Ennahda party won, formed a government, and then made way for a team of technocrats, showing a level of compromise not seen elsewhere. This parliamentary election represents an opportunity to solidify the democratic process, a crucial moment for Tunisia. Well, two main parties will square off for this parliamentary vote. The Islamic-leaning Ennahda remains Tunisia's largest and most organised political party. It is competing for votes with Nida Tounes, the country's main secular party. But the big problem facing them both could be political apathy. A poll by the Pew Research Centre recently found Tunisians have much less faith in democratic reform than they did 2 years ago. A big reason for that is the economy, which, as Nazanin Mashiri explains, has loomed large over the political debate.
The music is about poverty and unemployment. This group is recording lyrics in Tunisian slang to dub over a well-known French cartoon. They have a huge audience on social media. The message of this sketch is don't vote unless you know why you're taking part in the elections.
When you watch television campaign adverts, they don't reflect the streets. They're not aimed at Tunisians. You only see the upper classes and people running for election driving a Porsche Panamera.
That's why many young people are angry. Wafa Rimi is one of many graduates who can't find work. She travels to this job centre every day.
The education system hasn't changed for a countless number of years. It's just becoming more and more mediocre.
Jobs and dignity were among the slogans of Tunisia's uprising in 2011. So there's frustration that unemployment keeps rising. When you speak to young people in cafes like this, many of them will tell you they don't know if they're voting on Sunday. They feel like the parties aren't taking the issue of unemployment seriously, and they also don't trust many politicians. Tunisia's government says it's trying to create jobs, but the economic uncertainty has led to many young people travelling to Europe illegally, and it may have partly contributed to what the Minister of Interior says is the presence of more than 2,000 Tunisians in armed groups in Syria and Iraq. But some say voting this time can make a difference.
We saw that the regime that we revolted against did nothing for the jobless. And for the last 3 years, people in charge haven't achieved anything. That's why we are pushing our youth to be part of the elections.
This is what the young are connecting with. Rapper Kafon's song Humani talks about inequality and poor living standards. It's had 14 million hits, a figure some election campaigners can only dream about. Young people were at the heart of Tunisia's revolution. Now it seems that many of them feel let down by the democratic process. Nazanin Mashiri, Al Jazeera, Tunis.
Well, let's bring in our guests. In Tunis, Yusra Ghannouchi, spokesperson for the Tunisian Ennahda party. And also in Tunis is Rabia Najlawi, member of the Nida Tounes party. Welcome to you both. Let's begin with Rabia Najlawi.
Thank you.
Has it been difficult to motivate voters in this campaign?
Well, actually, yes, it was very difficult to motivate people, especially young persons, because they were not satisfied and they were like disappointment. There is a big disappointment among this the youth because they were demanding for many things and they were expecting many things too. So this thing of expectations is the thing that make all these young people refuse to go to the ballot offices in the election and to give their votes to one of the party. So I think this is the disappointment, and it's because of the big number of election campaigning promises from all over the parties, and especially the governing ones.
Well, Yusra Ghanouchi, your experience, the expectations or failed expectations, has this been an issue in motivating your support?
I think there's great excitement in Tunisia, and in fact most of the new voters who have registered in these elections are young people, and this is an opportunity for all Tunisians to make their voices heard, to account their politicians and to question them. And I call on all Tunisians to take part this Sunday and to make a choice based on the programs that are on offer.
Well, Rabia Najlawi, it seems that this election is as much about the process, about democracy itself, as about who should govern. It is terribly important for the country to get through this process calmly, smoothly and peacefully, is it not?
I have to say first that we have held a previous election on 2011, but this election is unique since it is the first election after the adoption of the new constitution on January 2014. And we're gonna vote for 217 seats in the parliament. And then we're gonna have a presidential election too. So this is about the democracy, to maintain democracy in Tunisia. So I call everyone, especially young people as me, to go and to vote and to choose right, to choose the right person. It's impossible to find someone who can represent you fully. You have to choose the one that, like, you share common things, especially like the big number of common things, so you can choose them. I think that today we have a challenge, is that to have a successful and fair and free election in Tunisia, and everybody is depending on this election to start a new Tunisia, to give a message that the Arab Spring can be successful, and that there is Tunisia here to can be an example, a good example of the Arab Spring country in the Arab world.
Yusra Ghanouchi, some have argued that the 2011 election result, in which Ennahda did so well, was a knee-jerk reaction to decades of autocratic rule. This election, perhaps the electorate looking more closely at issues. It is far more specific, is it not, than a reaction, a relief at the end of a dictatorship?
Yes, these elections will be different. The last elections were for a constituent assembly to write a new constitution for Tunisia that breaks with the past of dictatorship and corruption, and Tunisians have succeeded in writing that progressive and inclusive constitution. These elections are more about the immediate challenges facing Tunisia, particularly in the economic and security fields. And this is what our campaign has focused on answering those questions that Tunisians are concerned about, rather than the campaigns of other parties that are reviving ideological differences, which we believe have been settled in the constitution. We believe indeed that these elections are about the daily problems of Tunisians, and that's what our campaign has addressed.
Well, Rabia Najlawi, we hear there the phrase ideological differences. There has been criticism of Ennahda in the past for its religious base. Is that an issue in this election? Is that an issue to a party like yours in terms of attracting voters?
I think that this election is very important in Tunisia, and it's really a crucial moment now that we are living. But we are holding this election to improve the social conditions in Tunisia and to integrate youth and to betterment for the country and the social conditions, because you know that Tunisia has suffered a lot from marginalization and deprivation. We are not against religious parties. We can accept religious parties and we can share everything in Tunisia. We believe that Tunisia is for all Tunisians, but for everyone who respects the constitution, the Tunisian constitutions, and who believes in the civil state, and who believes in democracy, and who believes in peace living, we can share living with everyone who believes in these principles.
Well, Yusra Ghanouchi, during its term in government, Ennahda did come under criticism from some quarters for what was seen as its religious agenda. And yet, the moment at which that constitution was agreed upon, it seemed that such argument has to go off the table. The constitution is something that has been agreed to by all. Was that the defining moment, the changing moment in terms of Ennahda having to fight a battle justifying its position, its political position, on the basis of being a religiously based party?
First, Ennahda is not a religious party, it is a political civil party, and I agree, the supposed alleged religious agenda has been disproven not only by Ennahda's performance when it was part of the government, as it was committed to respecting people's choice and not imposing anything on society or individuals, and also proven by Tunisia's progressive constitution, to which Ennahda, being the majority party, made a major contribution. So again, I believe that what Tunisians need is not identity conflicts or ideological polarization, but for its politicians to come together, to cooperate, to respond to the aspirations and needs of Tunisians.
In the first stage, in terms of governments in which Ennahda was a central player in the troika, which effectively governed the country, was there a sense that mistakes were made? Was the party aware that it may have made mistakes that it would do differently next time, should it emerge victorious again?
All the parties that were part of the coalition in the 2012-2013 government were obviously new to power. They had not been part of the regime of dictatorship and corruption. So, and there were huge challenges. Considering that huge successes have been made, particularly on the political side, by the adoption of the constitution and the establishment of constitutional bodies that will establish a stable democracy in Tunisia, but also in terms of the economy, by stopping the post-revolution recession and the explosion in unemployment. That trend was reversed under the coalition government. The growth rate went from -2.2 to +3.5. Unemployment went down from almost 19% to 15%. And I'd like to point out that the report you had shown was inaccurate on this point, that unemployment is not in fact rising. It had risen in the year after the revolution, but since then, since the October 23rd, 2011 elections, that has been going down. There are still challenges, huge challenges facing Tunisia because of decades of mismanagement, because of the instability following the revolution, and because of difficulties in the region and in fact the global recession as well with our partners. But great successes have been made, and we must continue by focusing on these challenges.
Well, let's just pause for a moment here and take a look at what has happened in Tunisia since the start of the transition phase. President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali became the first casualty of the Arab Spring uprisings in January 2011. The same year, Tunisia's first free election saw the victorious Ennahda party forming the Troika coalition, which included the secular CPR and Etakator parties. But last year, opposition leaders Chukri Belaid and Mohamed Brahmi were assassinated, fueling what was already a volatile political situation. And finally, in January this year, after more than 2 years of political uncertainty, the Troika stepped down in favor of a caretaker government. In the same month, as we said, Tunisia finally adopted a new constitution. A new government of professionals led by Mahdi Juma was sworn in and tasked with setting up the new elections that are happening this weekend. Rabia Najlawi, I mean, here we see a series of events in which a country was on the brink of political turmoil, on the brink of political meltdown, as some of the other countries in the region have been. Yet, through a process of compromise by the political leaders, it was able to step back from the brink, get agreement on a constitution, get agreement on an election which is taking place this weekend. Is this something that Tunisians can be proud of and should be proud of?
Actually, I have to say that Tunisians proved that they are to give the good example about civilization and everything, because of the culture that the first president of our republic, Habib Bourguiba, has made in us, and we all consider the sons and daughters of Habib Bourguiba, who had made the first constitution in 1959, and also before the constitution, the status, the personal status code on 1957. I think that Tunisians are conscious enough to demand for the change, but they voted for another party, and they give them, I think, approximately 37% of the votes and 41 of the seats in the parliament. But this Islamist party have to confess that they have failed, and because they monopolize the structures of the power, and they prove that they are unfit to satisfy the demands claiming during the uprising of 2011, and also because they were unable to satisfy and to give all the demands during their election campaign promises.
Yusra Ghannouchi, what do you think of that criticism, the fact that the expectations have not been met and Ennahda, as the victorious party last time, being held responsible?
This is, in fact, the complete opposite of reality. There was no domination or monopoly of power. In Tunisia's transition to democracy has been so successful in contrast to the rest of the region, specifically because of this, because of the approach of consensus building, compromise, coalition building, and cooperation and coexistence between moderate Islamists and seculars. And this has been pioneered by Ennahda party and its partners, and it's a model to be emulated in the region and beyond. So there was the coalition government which brought together moderate Islamists and secularists. There were several compromises made by Ennahda and concessions in the national dialogue in order to preserve the democratic process and in order to arrive at these elections, which we are witnessing in a couple of days. There have been, of course, unfulfilled expectations, which happens in any democracy. We may not have been able to fulfill all expectations, particularly after a revolution which raised expectations very high. But we have been able to preserve the main gain from the revolution, which is freedom for Tunisians, by establishing the foundations for a stable and sustainable democracy. And now we will be focusing on the other demand of the revolution, which is dignity for all Tunisians, by providing employment, providing security for all Tunisians.
Yusra Ghannouchi, I just want to follow up with an issue that has been contentious in terms of this campaign, and that is the fact that former officials within the Ben Ali regime are taking part within these elections. Is that not a dangerous gamble, the idea of deep state? We've seen that happen in Egypt, for example. Is this not a threat? Do Tunisians not see this as a threat, allowing officials from the former regime to stand? Or is it part of a true mature democracy?
It is a risk, but we have also seen the disastrous consequences of exclusion across the region. Tunisia, from the beginning, in 2011, also there have been parties derived from the dissolved RCD former ruling party that took part in the 2011 elections. So from the beginning, there was a tendency towards avoiding exclusion and allow people to make that choice. This has been one of the factors that have contributed to Tunisia avoiding the fate of other Arab Spring countries. And on Sunday, Tunisians will have the opportunity to freely choose between all parties taking part in the elections.
Well, Rabia Najlawi, opinion polls indicate that there may not be an outright winner in this election, that there is going to be some form of coalition government, in effect a government of national unity. Would a party like yours be prepared to look to Ennahda as a coalition partner in a new government?
So this depends on the results of the elections. But as I said, we are looking for a unity government, but with whose believe in the civil state, as I said, and believe in the second article of the Constitution, which says that Tunisia is a civil state which is based on citizenship, the will of the people, and the supremacy of the law. This is what we believe, and we believe in the Tunisian flag. This is our hopes, is to make coalitions with the nearest parties who share these principles, the preliminary principles and important principles about the civil state. We're gonna wait for the results, but this is what I can ensure, that we're gonna make unity governments with whom we share these principles. And we as Nida Tunis, we have a big chance to win the legislative elections, and it is in 3 days. We're gonna hold this election in 3 days. We have a big chance to win this legislative elections, and we have already the parties that we're gonna make a coalition with them. The Union for Tunisia is one of them, and it's a group of parties, of 3 parties, and we are one party among them.
Well, Yusra Ghannouchi, the same question to you. Should Ennahda emerge as the dominant party as it did before, but not getting the majority, would it consider as a coalition partner the party which has been strongest against us at this particular point? You heard there the outline of what is needed. It would appear that Ennahda, by accepting the constitution, has met all those criteria. Would you consider a coalition?
Before the 2011 elections, before the results, Ennahda said that regardless of the results, whether or not we have a majority, Ennahda wants to form a national unity government that includes as many parties as possible. And we tried hard to have that, and we worked with those parties that responded positively to our call. And we have consistently repeated that, and we say that again, that regardless of the results, whether or not Ennahda has a majority, we will work very hard and demonstrate flexibility and openness to all parties in order to form a government that has the broadest possible support, in order to have political stability that will enable us to enact the urgent and difficult reforms that are needed in the Tunisian economy.
Well, Tunisia continuing its attempts to be a beacon of democracy in the region. My thanks to our guests, Yusra Ghannouchi and Rabia Najlawi. And please feel free to add your voice to this discussion. You can leave your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. We're also on Twitter. Look for @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mike Hanna, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching and goodbye for now.